Okay guys, so here is lesson 10, Transport in the Phloem part 2. This is an HL only lesson. So if you're an SL student, you don't need to learn this. So take a break and work on your HL classes. Okay, so we're going to finish talking about 9.2, Transport in the Phloem of Plants. So here's our to-do list for today. We're going to be talking about more of the actual process, like I said last time, next class about the process. So here we are talking about the process. So it's more these kind of parts at the beginning here. We're talking about we're moving compounds from sources to sinks. We're talking about the properties of water, the incompressibility of water that allows this to happen along hydrostatic pressure gradients. We're going to talk about active transport in this process and the different solute concentrations. It's going to lead water to be taken up by osmosis. We're talking about hydrostatic pressure again and how that's causing flow, called mass flow of phloem. And we're going to talk about these experiments they did to figure with aphid stylets. These two things here, the application skills, we did them last class, talking in detail about the structure and function of phloem. Okay, so first let's talk about how do we know everything we learned about last class? All these things we learned about phloem and about how it works. How do scientists know this? How have we learned about phloem, and particularly about the speed at which phloem moves? This is a really interesting and kind of a critical question for botanists to understand. And the problem is if you kill a plant or you cut through a stem, you're no longer going to still have phloem flowing. Right? So you want the phloem to flow if you're going to measure a rate of flow. So this is a really interesting tool, is using what are called aphids. So if you've ever seen an aphid on a rose, I know some of the roses I had outside the biolab when we first got them were covered in aphids. And they're very, very small insects, and they have a special structure called a stylet. And here it is here, they can go really far down into a plant stem, through the epidermis, through the mesophyll, through the companion cell, into the phloem. So their little stylet goes all the way through down here into the phloem. And the reason why they're going into the phloem is because that's where the nutrients are, the sugar is. So that way the aphid can suck up that sap, which is called phloem sap, get all that sugary deliciousness, and use it to live. So by using aphids, we're able to kind of extract phloem at certain points along a stem without killing the plant. Because of course an aphid doesn't want to kill a plant, it just wants to get some sugar. So it's such a small stylet going in, it's not going to really harm the plant in the long term. It'll just remove some phloem from it. So what scientists did is they took aphids and they encouraged aphids on a stem, a fairly long stem, to put their stylet in and take a sample. So they put an aphid here, and then once the aphid was all the way in, they would cut the aphid stylet here with scissors, and then that leaves this little kind of almost like a needle allowing phloem to come out. So they get a sample of the phloem without actually harming the plant. They do harm the aphid though. So how we can do this, so we look here we have our source of sugar, the leaves for photosynthesis, and then we have all these different little aphid colonies, little groups of aphids, different distances down the stem. And what they would do is let those aphids implant their stylet into the stem and then cut the stylet to allow the phloem to come out, but be able to be a sample taken by scientists. Now, a sample isn't enough to help us understand the rate of flow. We have to track certain molecules of carbon. So what they did is they put the leaves in a glass chamber that contains a radioisotope. So it contains radioactive carbon-14, very similar to what Calvin did in his lollipop experiment, also using radioactively tagged molecules to help with this, carbon as well. So this means because the plant here has no other source of carbon dioxide to do photosynthesis, it's going to be using this CO2. And then what they can do is they can measure when that radioactive CO2 carbon starts showing up in the sugars. So it gets incorporated into the leaf, and taken in through the stomata, used in photosynthesis, and incorporated into sugar. And then that sugar will then flow in the phloem down the stem. So they can track how quickly it takes from when those leaves first start getting that radioactive CO2 until the first colony ends up getting some radioactive CO2, and measure the time it takes to reach the next colony, the next, and the next. So if we look at this data here, okay, we're able to, by using a combination of this radioactive tagging and the aphids, figure out the rate of flow. So I want you to look at this data table and pause the video and take a minute and explain to yourself in your own words what this means. What is this process? How does it work? What does the data tell us? Okay, so hopefully you understood the data is telling you that our original time here for the first colony, from a starter to the first, it's 20 centimeters distance between these two, and it took 1.25 hours for the radioactive carbon and the sugar to go from here to here. So transport is 16 centimeters per hour, and then from the starter to colony 2 is 40 centimeters, so additional 20 between here, additional 20 between here. And this took 2.4 hours to go from the starter to colony 2, so that was 16.7 centimeters per hour. And from the starter all the way to colony 3 took 3.8 hours, or 15.8 centimeters per hour. So it's around 16 centimeters per hour for each one. And this is a really interesting and kind of cool experiment using this kind of biological technology of the aphid stylets, using radioactively tagged carbon to track this. Just like how when Calvin did his experiment with lollipops, using multiple different kind of experimental design techniques, the same thing's happening here. Okay, so the key idea from this part of the lesson is removing radioactively tagged samples of sugar from the phloem allows scientists to measure the rate of flow. And rate of flow differs quite a bit between different species, so it's a really interesting factor to analyze. Okay, so let's talk about how this movement actually happens. So first thing, the most basic thing about phloem is phloem moves from the source to the sink. And this process of moving from the source to the sink is called translocation. Okay, and so you think about what are sources and what are sinks. So in this diagram here, we have a source up here, we have a sink down here. So use those ones and then try and brainstorm other examples of sources and sinks. So pause the video and brainstorm a bit here. Okay, so some sources would be leaves, of course, when they're photosynthesizing. Bulbs and tubers are going to be seasonal. So things like tubers would be like a potato, bulbs for irises, tulips, kind of plants. Those are going to be sources only in the springtime when the plant is trying to grow a new plant from that original source. And some sinks, bulbs and tubers, when you're making the bulb and the tuber in the summertime and fall. Roots, as roots are growing. Meristems, meristematic tissue, or meristems, that's a tissue that plants are growing with. And where plants are growing is through a meristem. So we have apical and lateral meristems are growing. Flowers and seeds are all different places in which plants grow, and therefore require sugar, require energy. Fruit as well should be on the list. Okay, so how does this actually happen? So the first step of translocation is we're going to load the phloem with sugar. So here is my source, and it's going to go through the leaves into the companion cell and into the seed tube element of the phloem through these little lateral channels, which remember are called plasmodesmata from last class. And it's loading the sugars in here. It might be loading hormones, loading RNA, other things as well, but the big thing that's mostly happening is sugars. Now, some plants have this kind of space here called an autoplast, and it's between the cell membrane here of the leaf cells and between the companion cell membrane here. So if it's an autoplast, first you're going to have the sugars loaded into here, and then we're going to be actively transporting those sugars into the companion cell to then go into the phloem seed tube element. Okay, so this is active transport happening here, and we'll talk a little more about how that happens specifically later. But we need to be loading and making a high concentration of sugars in the phloem up here. Okay, so once we have this high concentration of sugar in the phloem, so here's sugars with the red dots, high concentration up here, that is going to increase. This concentration means that the water in the xylem is going to want to come in through osmosis to kind of make the concentration gradient function. So if you remember, the membrane of xylem is impermeable, so the sugar can't go into the xylem to even out the concentration, so instead of water is going to come into the phloem to try and even it out. And that water movement from xylem to phloem at the really concentrated part of the phloem, where all that sugar loaded in, is really important. And because water can't be compressed easily, and we have all this water and all this sugar here, it's going to be a really high pressure environment, a really high hydrostatic pressure. And because pressure wants to relieve itself and go from high pressure to low pressure, it's going to cause this flow towards a region of low pressure. Okay, which in this case is going to be a sink, which in this example is a root cell. Okay, the sugars are going to flow towards the sink via the companion cell, and then once it enters the companion cell and then into the sink, then the water can go back out to the xylem because now the concentration is much lower. So a lot less sugar here than there is up here. So that means the water can go back out, everything's happy with the concentration gradient, and stay in the xylem. So it takes xylem and phloem together to move things from source to sink in a plant. So when sugars eventually reach the sink, whether that is a root, a tuber, a meristem, a flower, a fruit, whatever it happens to be, they're going to be converted into starch. And it's a really important idea because if you think about topic 2, starch has a very different structure than sugars. The big thing is it has no osmotic effect because it's nonpolar. It cannot be dissolved in water. So it's not going to be affecting the osmosis. That's what's causing the water to go back to the xylem, because now the concentration is much, much higher of starch and less of sugar. And since starch isn't soluble, it's not going to affect the concentration gradient. Okay, but to maintain this high concentration of sugars and starch, the sink is going to have to use active transport. So it's trying to pull all the sugar inside the sink. And to do that, it's going to use a proton gradient, just like we use in a lot of other processes in biology. So it's going to use ATP, converting ATP to ADP and a phosphate to pump protons outside the sink. And then that is going to then be able for the sucrose and the proton together to move through one protein channel together back inside. So this is the energy form that's taking the sugar in against the concentration gradient. We're making it really high concentration inside the sink and low concentration outside. This is the companion cell. So we need to use the hydrogen ion to pull it in. And since it's high hydrogen out here and low out here, the hydrogen will want to naturally move this way because of the concentration gradient, and it's going to just take a sucrose with it along for the ride. Okay, so this loading and unloading, so here's unloading. At the top we talked about loading of sugars. That is an active transport process. At the source and at the sink, it's active transport, but the whole flow of the phloem is passive. So even though we're spending some energy to load those different compounds across, the entirety of the whole thing is passive. So the flow is passive, which means really it's not too energy draining for the plant. Okay, so it's passive because we have this hydrostatic pressure gradients. So hydrostatic pressure is we have this high pressure due to water. Right, the water concentration here is really high, so it causes pressure. It's called bulk flow of the solution moving towards a sink. In this example, it's an apple, a fruit. Okay, so when any liquid has a high concentration of solutes and has limited space, it's going to have a higher hydrostatic pressure. It's more pressure, there's more water in there as well, and then increases the pressure pushing against the structure of the phloem, of the sieve tube element, and that's going to cause to want to relieve that pressure and move down. So like any gradient, a pressure gradient is like a concentration gradient, is going to want to move from high to low. Okay, this doesn't just happen. All these diagrams are showing you moving it vertically down from like the leaves to the roots, but it can happen in lots of different directions. It's from a root to a fruit, from a leaf to a fruit. It can go from a leaf to the stem at the top of a plant that's growing to get taller. It could go from a leaf to the same branch to grow a new leaf. Anywhere we're going to be using sugar is our sink. And remember, the water from the xylem to phloem, that's through osmosis, and the sucrose loading here, unloading here, that's going to be active transport. Okay, so here's the key idea. Xylem and phloem work together using a mix of active and passive transport to circulate nutrients from source to sink. So your assignment for today, based to show me that you've done this work and you have completed it, is to make sketch notes. So, and I really feel like it's an important part of my job in the DP to help you guys learn different styles of note-taking, different review skills, different study strategies to help you get ready for the IB exam next year, and also to help you get ready for university. So, what you need to do is you're going to pick to do sketch notes about either xylem or phloem. You can do both if you want. It's easier to do both. And you're going to do some sort of sketch notes. We're going to sketch out, include drawings. You can do structural drawings. This one has the phloem here and the xylem here. You can do big keywords like this to help differentiate. You could do T-charts, Venn diagrams, but some sort of very drawn sketch note that shows all these different parts. So here's examples for xylem and phloem. You need to make your own. And what you need to do is upload a copy, an image of your sketch note to this post on Schoology, and then I'll know you've done the work for today. Again, if you have any questions about this lesson, I know we're doing virtually. I can't see your faces. I can't tell if you're understanding or not very easily. So please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm here to help. And next class, we'll be back together with SLs doing 4.3 carbon cycling. Okay, have a good day, guys. Stay safe, stay home, wash your hands, and take care.